Chief Executive unveils guidelines on conflicts of interest cases. China fines multinational milk powder producers for price fixing, and the US evacuates diplomatic staff from Yemen.
Good evening. Chinese researchers have found the strongest evidence yet that H7N9 bird flu can spread from person to person, but they've made clear the virus does not transmit easily. In the study published in the British Medical Journal, scientists interviewed the family and close friends of a father and daughter, both killed by H7N9 in eastern China. The 60-year-old man, the first index patient, bought 6 live quails before falling sick earlier this year. His 32-year-old daughter, who had no known exposure to live poultry, took care of him in hospital. Strains of the virus isolated from samples taken from each patient were found to be almost genetically identical. That suggests the virus was transmitted directly from father to daughter. Scientists also tested 43 people who had been in contact with the 2 victims, and none of them had H7N9. Back locally, the chief executive may relieve officials from their tasks that may give rise to conflict of interest, and they may be refrained from further acquiring or disposing of investments or interests. They're part of a new set of guidelines revealed today on potential conflict of interest cases involving government officials. But as Evelina Leung reports, the move has already sparked controversy.
A number of conflict of interest controversies involving government officials have taken center stage over the past few months. Today, the Chief Executive's office unveiled a new set of guidelines on how the CE will handle potential cases. The guidelines stipulate that a conflict of interest situation arises when the private interests of an official are in conflict with the interests of the government or his or her official duties. Such private interests also include circumstances in which kinship or friendship or some other association or loyalty which doesn't give rise to a financial interest can influence the judgment of the official in the discharge of duties. In handling a potential case, the CE should examine the facts, take into account the duties of the official concerned, the relationship between the official and those with whom he or she has official dealings, and whether the relationship could lead to embarrassment or loss of impartiality in the discharge of duties. If the CE finds there is a conflict of interest, he may order the official to divest himself or herself of all the investments or interests or place them in a blind trust, among other things. If there is criminal element involved, the CE should report it to law enforcement. Generally, officials are discouraged from accepting advantages, but if an advantage is accepted, the chief executive should consider its value as well as the reputation and the status of the person who offered it and the person's relationship with the official. The CE would consider whether it would adversely affect the government's image, among other things. Despite the release of the guidelines, the CE has come under fire for failing to consult the public.
To release the guidelines during the summer recess of LegCo, it's quite ridiculous, knowing that some legislators are not here, we are not in session, so we cannot hold a committee meeting immediately to study the guidelines. If you issue guidelines which legislators, members of the public, and even principal officials do not truly comprehend, let alone follow, then what use is it?
Among the suggestions the Democratic Party put forth regarding the guidelines, one of them is should government officials find themselves in a possible conflict of interest situation, they should first tell the chief executive before submitting a written declaration. The CE should then make the declarations public. Evelina Leung, TVB News.
Turning overseas now, US President Barack Obama said he was disappointed that Russia had granted temporary asylum to Edward Snowden. Snowden, an ex-National Security Agency contract worker, is accused of leaking details about US government surveillance secrets, and Washington wants him to be sent back to face espionage charges. This was the first time Obama had commented on the case since the decision by Moscow last week. While he confirmed that he would attend the G20 summit in St. Petersburg next month. Obama did not say if he would meet separately with his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin during the trip. The Obama administration did say it would hold talks with Russia's defense and foreign ministers in Washington on Friday as scheduled, despite the row over Snowden.
In his court-martial that opened yesterday, U.S. Army psychiatrist Nidal Hasan has admitted to carrying out the massacre of 13 soldiers at Fort Hood, Texas in 2009. The American-born Muslim also spoke of his conversion to jihad against the United States. More from NBC News.
It was one of the bloodiest rampages ever on a U.S. military base. A single gunman, identified by authorities as Army Major Nidal Hasan, opening fire on unarmed soldiers and civilians at Fort Hood, Texas in November of 2009. Hasan was charged with 13 counts of premeditated murder and 32 counts of attempted premeditated murder. He too was shot by a policeman and is now paralyzed. In court today, Hasan wore an Army combat uniform and a beard and sat in a wheelchair. He is acting as his own attorney and in his opening statement offered no defense but an explanation, saying, "The evidence will clearly show that I am the shooter and that he switched sides to defend Islam." Prosecutors say in planning the attacks, Hasan bought lots of ammunition and that his motive was a radicalized religious belief and anger over being called up for deployment to Afghanistan. In his opening statement, Colonel Steve Hendricks said he had a jihad duty to kill as many soldiers as possible. One of the first on a list of surviving victims to testify was retired Army Staff Sergeant Alonzo Lunsford, who recently described how Hasan shot him 7 times inside a medical processing center.
That's when he yelled, "Allahu Akbar," pulled the weapon out, turned the lasers on, fist and palm, and started discharging his weapon inside of our building.
Many of the victims have sued the U.S. government, asking officials to classify the shootings as an act of terror so they can get combat-related benefits.
But they left every one of these victims behind and their families, and they've treated them disgracefully.
Survivors are also outraged Hasan is still collecting his military salary, totaling nearly $300,000 since his arrest. The Pentagon says it can't stop the payments unless he's convicted. Now, security for this trial is so tight that Hasan is flown to court every day by helicopter and has special accommodations, the costs of which also outrage the victims.
A Chinese scientist who was initially accused of stealing a cancer research drug at a medical school in the United States was sentenced in Wisconsin but spared a further time behind bars. 41-year-old Zhao Huajun was sentenced to time served for the 4.5 months he had already spent under custody, plus 2 years of probation. He was initially accused of stealing 3 vials of a possible cancer-fighting drug from the Medical College of Wisconsin in February. Prosecutors said Zhao also downloaded accompanying research in hopes of passing it off as his own in China. The scientist later pleaded guilty to a reduced charge of accessing a computer without authorization. He also acknowledged logging onto the school's servers, downloading research data, and deleting the files after he was suspended over the drug's disappearance. The missing vials have never been found. The court heard that Zhao was a dedicated researcher who just wanted to safeguard his work and that he never intended to profit from it. A huge fire engulfed Kenya's main international airport this morning, choking off travel to East Africa's main aviation hub. Thick black smoke filled the sky above Nairobi as emergency crews battled the blaze. The fire gutted the international arrivals hall where passengers pass through immigration and retrieve their luggage. Flights to Nairobi are being diverted to Kenya's port city of Mombasa and other countries including Uganda and Rwanda. 2 people were treated for smoke inhalation, but no serious casualties were reported. The cause of the fire is not yet known. Well, China has fined 6 multinational milk powder producers a total of $110 million for price fixing. The announcement comes as the country is still reeling from a milk powder recall because of the Fonterra contamination scare. Fonterra is one of the companies that's been fined, along with Mead Johnson of the US, Abbott Laboratories and Danone of France, Dutch dairy cooperative Friesland Campina and Hong Kong-listed Biostim International Holdings. The companies admitted they had violated China's anti-monopoly law by setting a minimum price distributors could charge. Setting a minimum price is common practice in some countries where companies want to maintain an image as a premium brand. But Beijing is especially concerned with trying to keep consumer prices low. The U.S. flew some diplomatic personnel out of Yemen in the Arabian Peninsula because of fears of a possible terrorist attack there. It's also advising all of its citizens to leave the country immediately. Alan Buckner reports.
It's believed the evacuated personnel were aboard the C-17 cargo plane captured on amateur video. Yemen, one of the poorest Arab countries, is the base for Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, or AQAP. It's one of the most active branches of the organization founded by Osama bin Laden. U.S. sources say communication between bin Laden's successor, Ayman al-Zawahiri, and the AQAP is part of the intelligence behind the alert that prompted the U.S. State Department to close 19 embassies in the Middle East and North Africa last week.
Our focus is on keeping both our personnel and citizens who are traveling overseas safe. We make decisions on a daily basis. We evaluate information on a daily basis. This decision is a response to an immediate, specific threat.
The State Department also advised all U.S. citizens in Yemen to leave the country immediately. Several European countries, including Britain, have also chosen to close their embassies in Yemen. Raja Badi, a spokesman for the Yemeni government, says it's worrying that diplomatic missions are being closed, but he believes it's the right thing to do, and the evacuation may have staved off a serious attack. Alan Buckner, TVB News.
And still to come in our news. An attempt to smuggle endangered animal parts into Hong Kong foiled. Airport Security Chief Sidney Chow's contract terminated. And a call for foreign domestic helpers' home return rule to be strictly enforced. Welcome back. Customs officers have seized an estimated $41 million worth of smuggled ivory tusks, rhinoceros horns and leopard skins from containers that came from Nigeria. Hundreds of animals were harmed in the creation of this story. 1,120 elephant tusks, 13 rhino horns and 5 pieces of leopard skins, all retrieved from 21 wooden crates by customs officers yesterday. Officers said the smugglers tried to outsmart authorities by shipping 2 containers on the same consignment from Nigeria. The senders declared the goods to be processed wood.
These 2 containers, one of them, they actually filled the container full of wood logs. And the other one is also filled with wood logs. But in the innermost part of this container, they hide these 21 wooden crates.
This is the 3rd smuggling case involving endangered animal parts from Africa uncovered by local authorities so far this year. The others originated in Kenya and Congo, but all these cases have something in common. They all went through a diverted route, making stops on the mainland or in Singapore before arriving in Hong Kong. This time it came from Nigeria and went through Shanghai, where the cargo was first unloaded in mid-July and then picked up by another vessel bound for Hong Kong. Customs officers, who thanked mainland intelligence for the bust, said they believe that Hong Kong is just a holding stop where the goods will be stored until a buyer makes an offer. In a new twist to the corruption investigation into a former supporter of Chief Executive Leung Chun-ying, the ICAC has filed for a court warrant to demand that 2 media organizations hand over recordings of interviews with Liu Monghong. ICAC officers went to one of the media outlets, Commercial Radio, this afternoon with the court document. But the radio station said it has rejected the request, citing its journalism code of ethics. The other media body, iSun Affairs magazine, is still considering whether or not to abide by the warrant. Liu was arrested by the ICAC earlier this year in connection with the case involving Pearl Oriental Oil, which he served as vice chairman. After he was released on bail, he had interviews with the magazine and radio station, complaining that his arrest is political persecution by the chief executive after their relationship soured. The Hong Kong Journalists Association has released a statement calling the current move by the ICAC extremely unusual. A group representing employers of foreign domestic helpers say they are fed up with workers who take the money for their airfare home but instead go someplace else and return to Hong Kong. They want the system changed so they don't get shortchanged. People at today's protest insisted that domestic helpers have to return home once their contracts are finished. Under current arrangements, employers are obliged to buy their live-in helper an air ticket home once their contract is over.
We just want a fair deal for the employer as well as the worker. The previous employer has to pay the return air ticket to the worker. And then now there is an abuse of that system in that the worker doesn't go back to the home country. They just go to Macau or Shenzhen, and then come back for a new job.
Others think these workers should be able to go where they want, as long as employers don't have to pay for their airfares. An employer concern group says it has received 1,000 complaints about workers who provoke their bosses to dismiss them.
We don't mind them to not returning to the home country, but as long as we don't need to pay their home ticket, returning home ticket. Yeah, that's our point of view.
But the spokesman for the Asian Migrants Coordinating Body, Iman Villanueva, thinks workers won't cheat their employers out of the cost of an air ticket, which only costs $1,000. And once a contract ends, domestic workers have to leave Hong Kong within 2 weeks. This law makes it difficult for these migrant workers to look for new jobs if they want to change employers.
The head of security at Hong Kong International Airport, Sidney Chow, who's under investigation by the ICAC, had his contract terminated today. Aviation Security Company Limited said the termination of Chow's contract took effect immediately. The company's former Deputy Executive Director, Raymond Lau, will function as Acting Executive Director until further notice. This came as the ICAC is looking into allegations of irregularities in the hiring of a renovation company and the claiming of overtime payments, while Chow was the company's Executive Director. Cow & Gate and Caracare distributors are continuing with their recall of infant formula following a contamination scare in raw materials supplied by New Zealand's dairy giant Fonterra. But local pharmacists are concerned that the tainted cans of milk powder imported through parallel trade may still be available at drugstores. John De Silva reports.
Parallel trade in milk powder is once again under the spotlight. This time it's about infant formula that may contain contaminated ingredients by New Zealand's dairy exporter Fonterra. Local pharmacists say cans of the product brought in through parallel trade are still on the shelves of some shops.
I think there should be an awareness in the public that there are parallel goods being sold in the Hong Kong market. Right now there is no evidence to support that any of those products are free from the contaminated raw materials.
Chang underlines that unless evidence is provided by the manufacturers that such products have not used Fonterra ingredients, it is impossible to ascertain their safety. And she urged the government not to forget baby formula coming in through parallel trade in its monitoring efforts. The government said yesterday that the Centre for Food Safety will step up monitoring at source and demand importers to check if other dairy products have been affected. According to the Hong Kong Academy of Pharmacy, milk powder products from the parallel trade are 30 to 40% cheaper in local pharmacies. These cans of infant formula are being sold mostly to mainland visitors in areas such as Yau Ma Tei, Tsim Sha Tsui, Mong Kok and the North District. Cow & Gate and Caracare announced a recall of some of their products that may have been contaminated. This after Fonterra disclosed last Friday that 38 tons of its whey protein concentrate had been tainted with a bacteria that can cause botulism, a potentially fatal disease which affects the muscles and can cause respiratory problems. João De Silva, TVB News.
The Department of Justice is seeking the review of the prison sentence imposed on a construction worker who tortured a cat to death. The 48-year-old defendant was jailed for 3 months last week after he was found guilty of animal cruelty. The court heard he dragged the cat around by tying a rope around its neck and smashed its head with a bat. The man claimed he was intoxicated at the time. Animal rights groups have complained that the sentence was not severe enough. All right, Tony, over to you for sports.
That's right, we've got some tennis to start off with. And the top seeds are safely through to the next round of the Rogers Cup in Canada, and one of those in action was 7-time Grand Slam winner Venus Williams, who played her first match since injury forced her out of the French Open. With one eye on the US Open later this month, the world's top players are busy fine-tuning their hard-court game. At the Rogers Cup, Venus Williams played her first game since coming down with an injury back in May. Williams started well against Kirsten Flipkens, winning the first set 6-love before losing the next 2 sets and the match.
I was able to control the first set, but I think she just used her experience from this year and confidence to, gain control of the match. And, for me, I haven't been playing that much, so I kind of really lost my focus and lost my game plan and lost the match eventually.
Over in Montreal, top seed Novak Djokovic made it look so easy against Florian Mayer. The Serb wrapped it up 6-2, 6-1 to reach the third round. Earlier in the tournament, Milos Raonic gave home fans something to cheer about as he got past Jeremy Chardy of France to make it into round 2. And Germany's Tommy Haas was also a first-round winner, beating David Goffin of Belgium in straight sets. Well, as the dust settles on the latest drug scandal to rock baseball, teams in the Major League went on with the business of playing. And that included the Cleveland Indians and the Detroit Tigers. Detroit were helped in no small part by Justin Verlander, who pitched a great game from the mound. He allowed only 1 run and 4 hits over 8 innings as the Tigers beat the Indians for the 10th time in 11 games. Their 5-1 win opens up a 5-game lead over Cleveland in the American League's Central Division.
Coming around third, Torrey Hunter with the go-ahead run. He will score 2-1 Tigers as Cabrera lumbers into second base.
And with the final golfing major of the season teeing off tomorrow, the world's best are relishing an exciting battle ahead at the PGA Championship. US Masters winner Adam Scott is in with a shout, and of course you can never rule out Tiger Woods, who's bidding for his 15th major. Another player full of confidence is Phil Mickelson after his superb win at the British Open last month.
I feel as though I started to play my best golf in the last 4, 5, 6 months. I feel like I've keyed in on 2 areas that I've struggled with for years, which is putting and off the tee.
And that's it from us at TVB News.
Good night.
Good evening. Locally, the weather was mainly cloudy with a few showers and squally thunderstorms. There were sunny periods during the day. And as tonight's situation chart shows, an active southerly airstream is bringing showers to the coast of Guangdong. Today's temperatures ranged from 27.7 to 31.7 degrees, and the relative humidity was between 72 to 91%. Winds were moderate to fresh southeasterlies. The current temperature is now 29 degrees Celsius with the relative humidity standing at 81%. A trace of rainfall has been recorded since midnight. So Freddie, how's the weather tomorrow? It will be mainly cloudy tonight. There will be showers and a few squally thunderstorms at first. The minimum temperature will be about 27 degrees overnight. Showers will ease off gradually and there will be sunny periods during the day tomorrow. It will be fine and very hot in the next couple of days. Tomorrow's API is forecast at 5 to 65 and the pollution level will range from low to high. And the maximum UV intensity forecast for tomorrow will be about 11. And here's the latest global weather update. Sunny in Shanghai, cloudy in Taipei and Xiamen. Sunny in Guangzhou, showers in Macau, cloudy in Chengdu. Cloudy in Beijing and Seoul, bright in Tokyo. Thunderstorms in Bangkok, rain in Ho Chi Minh City, showers in Manila. Showers in Kuala Lumpur, thunderstorms in Singapore, rain in Jakarta. Thunderstorms in New Delhi, rain in Karachi. Sunny in Cairo. Sunny in Brisbane, showers in Sydney and Melbourne. Sunny in Toronto. Sunny in Vancouver, bright in San Francisco. Bright in London, cloudy in Paris and Frankfurt. And that's the weather. Have a lovely evening.